4:08 p.m. Today is Wednesday, March 11th, 2026. This meeting is being held at the boardroom at the school district. Please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. This meeting has been properly noticed and posted. Item 1.01 is the order and approval of the agenda. I reserve the right to change the order of items, combine items, or remove items at any time. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 1.02 is public comment. In the interest of privacy and due process, please do not raise personnel issues. Comments are limited to 3 consecutive minutes. No actions may be taken upon a matter raised under this item until the matter is specifically included in a future agenda. Are there any speakers? Seeing none, I move on. Approval of, item 2.01 is the approval of the, is that right? The February 11th? Okay, 2026 meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
And a second?
A second.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2.02 is the receipt and review and discussion regarding chronic absenteeism data. This is a non-action item. We will now review the calculation gap, demographic analysis, and root cause analysis. The floor is open for discussion. So before we get into discussion, because it's been a minute with us not meeting for a month now, all of these things that I put together were based on the discussion and questions that we had had in our previous meeting. And so one of the things that we wanted to look at was just our 2 biggest schools and demographic issues and how that might impact chronic absenteeism. So that's why I pulled that first just comparison between Spring Creek and Elko High. And then also I wanted to just show you some of the different ways that the chronic absenteeism is calculated. So this next page is just showing that on a 4-day week, our weights of absences carry more heavily. And then also that it's after 73 days that our chronic absenteeism is locked in. So if a student leaves before that 73 days and they just have withdrawn from the district, we are not counted for that student's chronic absenteeism. But after that, everything is calculated.
Even if they withdraw?
Even if they withdraw.
Okay.
Exactly. So if they withdraw and it's been after that 73 days, then we are going to, and it will be at a lower rate. So if they missed 8 days, or here it actually says within up to 73 days, they only have to miss 7.3 days, and that's going to be chronically absentee for them if they drop at that time. And then at the 110, they only miss 11 days, and then normally it's about 15 days is chronically absent. So that's what that data is showing us. And then there was something that Matt had brought up and that we discussed, is just that on the Nevada report card, there are 2 different percentages, and I know that causes confusion, and so my question at the time was, which percentage do we want to go off of? And I think that just staying sort of consistent is good, but I also wanted to clarify that it's not, just because those numbers are different doesn't mean that the data is wrong. It's how they're configuring the data. So I wanted to clarify that when the state gives us our overall report card and says something is, you have a 32% chronic absentee rate, that's because they've also factored in these other parts. So I just highlighted that schools that reduce their chronic absenteeism rate by 10% or more over the prior year may receive incentive points. And so you get kind of these extra points based on whether or not you're ninth grade students, if you're a high school, if your ninth grade students have earned 5 credits or more, you get more points for that. So it's not just chronic absenteeism that the state is looking at, and that's why they call it, we turn the next page, and we saw this last time too, student engagement. And so that's why they're calling it something more than just chronic absentee. And then what I thought we could look at too is I pulled both Spring Creek and Elko, and one is before the 4-day week, and the last one is just the last year's most recent data. So if you wanted to take a look at that too, just so that you can see that kind of what's going on there with our 4-day week.
So am I understanding this correctly? It looks like moving to a 4-day week, and not that it was the cause, but just there was an increase in percentages.
So are you looking at Spring Creek's?
I just looked at overall. Or I guess, well, yeah, they both say Spring Creek.
Uh-huh.
So Spring Creek increased, I guess, and so but Elko dropped. Am I looking at that right?
So Elko's star rating stayed, this is kind of the interesting thing, is that if you look at the top where it has this half circle, that actually improved with Spring Creek's. You want to get to that 10 marker. So that actually improved from our 5-day to the 4-day. And then Elko's.
That could be because of the credit sufficiency for freshmen. Mm-hmm. So both of those scores are calculated in that 10. Mm-hmm. And so that percentage, this document that we're looking at right now does not actually show the percentage of credit sufficiency for our 9th graders, which is calculated into that as well. Mm-hmm. So that could be why Spring Creek rose, but their chronic absenteeism. And then Elko did get bonus points this last year because we dropped from 25 to 22.9. So we did get that bonus point piece, which helped us maintain. But we just actually pulled the data for our, I hate to say it this way, but this is how we talk about it, is our freshman failure rate. And so we did have about a 14 to 15% freshman failure rate that students did not earn 5 or more credits.
And how did that compare?
If we look at this year's data, we looked at first semester data only. And so right now we're actually looking at about a 2% improvement over last year if we maintain the same trends in second semester for freshmen. So we did have 100 freshmen fail classes, but of those, about 35 were not earning 5, well, they're not on track to earn 5 or more credits because we only award 3.5 credits per semester. And so out of 7 classes, each class is a half a credit. So you can earn up to 7 credits per school year. To be considered on track for graduation, they have to earn 5 or more for the school year. So that's really a number we can't truly calculate. We can project and we can intervene, which we are right now in that data. But it's a hard number to track until the end of the year.
Yeah. I agree. Any other thoughts or observations? I've kind of thrown a lot at you.
So did I understand you correctly in that the first semester Elko High School statistics are the absenteeism part has increased a little bit, or no, has decreased, but then the, I guess the freshman number is actually dropped?
It's a lot of data.
Yeah.
It took me like a good, days to compile it all. So if we are looking, we were at about a 10% chronic absenteeism rate at the end of first semester. That number is not 100% accurate because I'm rounding. That's about a 2% improvement from where we were mid-year last year. So if the trend continues, we're anticipating again about a 2 to 3% improvement in our chronic absenteeism rate with all of the initiatives that we've been doing. And again, it's a trend. But then we also had January, February hit with a ton of illnesses. And so we didn't have quite that amount of illnesses last year. So it depends on how the data trends. We're hoping it maintains a positive increase. Our daily absenteeism rate, so the state looks at daily attendance and chronic absenteeism, we're trending up and seeing improvements, but not as much as we want. So we're working on some initiatives for positive growth there, partnering with communities and schools. They're doing award things for students and stuff for daily rates of attendance. And then that other score, like what goes into like this 3.5 out of 10 is our failure rates of freshmen. And it's only calculated for freshmen at the end of the school year. So again, we're trending in a positive direction. We just have to see what happens with this school year. I'll probably pull the data, the end of the quarter is tomorrow. So I'll probably do a pull on Monday of where we're currently sitting and just kind of do a check-in for that stuff. And then I would love, if I have some time, I'll try to do a cross study of freshman failure rates with absenteeism rates, because we definitely see correlations there. I just don't have those exact numbers because it's not as easy to pull. We have to sit down and kind of hand look at the data, but we will be doing that probably next week with quarter data.
I have a good program or a good report that can do that very easily. Okay. We want to talk later.
We should talk.
All right.
Well, and I know there's stuff in IC that,
yeah,
again, like as a teacher on our leadership team, I don't have full access, so I have to rely on our district to pull stuff for us too.
No,
so
there's some good stuff there.
You know.
Yeah, no, that's all really helpful, and I love that you're bringing it up and having those discussions in your school and seeing the correlation. So even though we are here to talk about attendance, I don't think we can talk about attendance without talking about these other issues that surround it. So yeah, we can just continue to see all of the different factors. So you were talking too about how you did your daily rate. And so I also wanted to clarify that with the NDE. So we don't use an average daily attendance anymore to calculate this. That is an easier model because the kids that come to school, if they're always coming to school, they're always, if you get enough of those kinds of kids, then you're gonna look really great. But in this model that we use, it's looking at the kids that don't come to school and how often those kids don't come to school, and that's what you're kind of graded on. So it's the count of individual students model. And then I also just broke it down again so that we could see more easily the 5-day traditional versus the 4-day week. And so an absence of a 5-day student would be about 0.55%, and we're 0.68%. So that difference, I think that we just have to be aware of it. I think we're seeing some other factors with the 4-day week that may, make this kind of a wash. And we also saw with Spring Creek and Elko that as far as the engagement factor, that wasn't hurt by the 4-day week. So I think that's all stuff that we should pay attention to and just kind of know that that's what's going on there. And so that was the data that we kind of had discussed from last time and just wanting more information. And so I didn't know, is there more data that you'd like to consider before we get to a root cause analysis? Or do you want to start looking at a root cause analysis? What are your thoughts?
I guess I was curious. I like looking at Elko High School and Spring Creek High School because they're our two biggest high schools. But I just don't want to miss if we have a chronic absentee sort of issue at the younger grades by focusing on the older grades. But I don't know what the rest of the schools kind of look like.
I was going to echo that too. I would love to see where the trends are starting. I think oftentimes, anytime we're looking at things that we would determine as a potential gap, when is that gap starting? And if we're going to start root cause analysis, I think we need to see the data really from a K-12 perspective and try to look of when are we starting to see that chronic absenteeism. Oftentimes it does start younger. And at the high school level, we often put it on the kids, hey, you're old enough to get to school now and whatnot. But if it's starting and that habit has been built, it's harder to get kids to school at the high school level. So yeah, I would love to see that data as well. I think we're seeing the finish line here of where it ends up, but where does it actually start?
Yeah.
And sorry, just a reminder that Sarah's on Zoom, so she might have thoughts to share as well.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
How are you?
Oh, doing okay. Just running kiddos around. So,
Okay, glad you could make it.
yes. And no comments right now, but I will chime in if I've got something.
Yeah, and I think that in our last meeting when we were looking at the star ratings, that was something that we definitely saw, was that those kids are showing us a lot of issues very early on in kindergarten and first grade even. And with this one, in the comparison, we were also, with this one, I think the comment had come up, something about the demographics and a comparison of demographics, because that's something that we also just want to be aware of. Do we have a certain area that is, a place that we need to focus our attention? So, and of course, those demographics might vary a little bit in elementaries, in the specific elementaries, but they're all going to filter into, and of course we could look at the outlying areas as well. But that's what we were, I think, wanting to get to with that first one, is just looking at that socioeconomic comparison and how that's impacting. But I agree that I can continue to pull, and from the outliers as well.
Emily, is there a way on IC to pull, when we code attendance, so every day of attendance has to be coded a certain way, and that's how some stuff gets coded. How many absence we have that are coded circumstance, which usually is the parents have called ahead of time. Or it's called for medical excused for like by a parent saying the kid's sick, or doctors know, which then exempts from. Because my wonder is, we want like that 10% gives you your sick days, right? Where just like as employees, we have a number of sick days we can take. Parents can call kids and we don't, if they're really sick, please don't send them to school. And how many are like prearranged, parents pulling kids out of school, going on vacations. Like we see that a lot, which really cuts into those sick leave days that kids get and extending over, which I think contributes to this as well. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to pull that data to see, is it really illness that's pulling kids out of school? And if so, there's not a lot we can do for that as far as what we can control. But as that circumstance, why are parents pulling their kids out? At least from our codes of how we're coding it, and then at some point I would love to hear from parents and some kind of a data gathering around our schools of why are our kids absent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, further discussion on that?
And just to confirm, we're talking about, I guess in this document, it says chronic absenteeism is defined as missing 10% or more of school days for any reason, including excused or unexcused. So kind of like you were saying, is that if there's any severe injury, family medical issue, then that all counts to the overall percentage of students missing. So that is a pretty critical.
And just know if parents, like if a doctor's note is provided or a doctor signs a note, this kid has to be out because they had surgery from this date to this date, that is exempt and not counted into attendance. If they're on a school-related activity, they're going to a football game and they're pulled out of school, that is exempt from that account. So we do not have to count that in towards this chronic absenteeism rate. But as a parent, if I call and say, hey, my kiddo's sick today, they're not coming, I've reported to the school. So it's an excused absence. That's how we get it from unexcused to excused. And then that's within that 10 days. So that will count. And then of course, any unexcused. Parents have 72 hours to report to the school when a kid is absent as to a reason why, in order to move it from an unexcused absence to an excused absence. And then you have 14.7, think of them as leave days, as we all have our work contracts, that you can do that with. After that is when it becomes chronic.
And just to be clear what you said if they had a doctor's note predetermining the days they were going to miss, it was not counted towards their overall in the school statistic of missing days?
Correct. It gets coded as medical exempt.
All right, thank you.
Is a doctor's note or a school function the only two truly excusable?
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a pre-excuse for the doctor's note. It can be after. And so I think too, we may be wanting to look at this in a couple of different ways. So there's, of course, the way of looking at this that are rating. Or there's also the way to look at this that we really want to address the issue of students who are just not coming to school, they're unexcused absences, their families are not excusing them. And so it becomes kind of a behavioral issue rather than family circumstance. So I think, we can, because I think they can be addressed differently. And so what are your thoughts on that? And that's just two different ways to kind of lump these in. There are more. So if there are other ways that you want to consider.
Do we have the ability to even pull that data? Like, can we see?
So what we could do is we can pull all of the kids that are unexcused absence. They've been coded for unexcused absences and for truancies. That means it's already gone into a discipline. But a lot of them just stay red. They just stay unexcused. And so we can pull that data for our district separately.
I think that'd be interesting to look at and see that correlation. And our star rating is our star rating, but it's not the biggest thing. We're about kids first. Like, yes, it is that overall data point, but behind every piece of data is a kid, and we have to remember that. And I think what I would love to see is we know that when kids aren't in school, there tends to be a correlation between gaps being created in reading, in math proficiency, and then those students continue to struggle. And so that's partly why we have ninth grade credit sufficiency mixed with chronic absenteeism. Like, there are correlations between those things. And I think if we want to do what's right for students, why do this problem need to be addressed? It's for our kids. We want our kids to do well. And we want them to be able to graduate from our high schools and get to choose any job they want because they have the skills. And I think if we can focus on what's the correlation between our kids who are not there and not doing as good in school? Like, that is an intervention piece that could be put in place to work with families and to really partner with them in that family engagement piece and in that part of our goals as well, is kind of where I would like to see this potentially go.
Emily, Sarah has her hand raised.
Oh, hi, Sarah.
Hi, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but kind of a sidebar question to go along with this is we will have kids who are absent, unexcused absent for a number of days. And we get to that point where if they don't call and don't show up and parents don't communicate, they can be a 10-day drop, right? Like 10 days of consecutive absences, and then they get unenrolled. We still go and make the effort to reach out to families and find out what's going on. And we have parents who will then go like backdate all those absences, like however many there are. So I do think, kind of like what Katie was saying, the family communication piece for me feels like the biggest thing to drive this, because parents who would excuse weeks of absences and just say, oh, they were home or they weren't feeling well or whatever, I feel like that feeds the problem, because they're supporting their kid, but not in a way that lets their student be successful at school. So, and I don't know how much we enforce that policy or that kind of rule about you only have so many days to actually excuse an absence, because I've seen them go far beyond that. And I don't know kind of on the school side then what we do about that to make sure we're holding up our end and doing things properly too.
Sarah, I love that you brought that up, because that was actually one of our things we brought up at Elko High School, that was happening as well. So as part of our initiatives to reduce chronic absenteeism rates, We communicated out to parents that we're holding firm to that 72-hour mark, and our front office has been doing so for the last, well, this school year and part of last year. And that has made a difference in parents communicating and holding it through true, and then looking at, we are going to truancies versus unexcused, and then holding the driver's licenses and stuff based on that, which has been, at the high school level, we have that ability, and it's the number one motivator that we've seen. But we also don't want to get to just, we want to try to curb the problem before we get to consequences that are negative. And so that's another thing we've been working on too, is how do we intervene quicker as opposed to wait until it's at that chronic absenteeism rate.
I guess, Emily, to get back to kind of what you were talking about, I would like to see kind of us narrow down, like where do we really start seeing in the schools that the chronic absenteeism becomes an issue, right? Like where those statistics really start jumping up. And then at that point, then try to look at demographically, or if we're talking about behavior situations, or to kind of then narrow it down. Because I think if we can get in at that early stage, hopefully then it affects it down the road into high school or wherever happens the years later.
Yeah.
From, I guess, what I've seen, just going through the different schools, just this school year, I see a lot of admins just grateful that the parents are calling in general, just to say something why their kid missed. And so I don't know if that is an education problem on the parent side of just not knowing maybe how serious missing one day is and how much material the student misses that one day, or the consequences of missing a school day and not reporting what it is, or even, there's a lot of like medical related absences that I have seen just on my end where they absolutely could have gotten a doctor's note, but they just excuse it as a medical thing. So I think I'd be curious to see the number of medical related absences, and then how much those in general could be reduced by just getting a simple doctor's note and going back.
So it sounds like we still want to look at more data to really, before we get to formulating our goals and strategies from there. But the data that we want to see is breakdown of grade levels and grade level by the type of absence. So kindergartners, how many are medical, how many are unexcused, how many are family circumstances, and then just do that for each grade. Does that sound right? And then when we get that information, that will hopefully give us some different areas, and we'll probably see different spikes. I can imagine that as soon as kids become teenagers, we might get some different kinds of trends than elementary. But so it's not to say that one thing is just going to be like, oh, this is what we see, that we're going to be able to nail it right here. But it will be able to show us, again, just more information to see how we might tackle it. So if you wouldn't mind, let's just look through a root, I just pulled a generic root cause analysis worksheet, and we don't have to go through it and actually do this today, but this is our goal to get to this. So we'd want to have our problem statement and know why we're doing this. And it gives the example, chronic absenteeism has risen by blank % across Elko County School District compared to other fiscal years. And so that gives us more of our why. Then we'd go on to brainstorming our potential district level contributors and looking at our policy and what we're in control of, basically. Not the, as tempting as it is, we want to stay away from the things that we know could really be causing a lot of this, but we have no control over. So, and then, so we look at, systematic causes, and then, and this gives us also different examples, resource allocation, training, human and environment factors, and then we can go through this process of the 5 whys. Why are we seeing the trend? Why did that happen? And you just keep asking why to the one analysis to dig deeper. And then from there, we start to propose a plan of action. And then review and check. So that's kind of a broad root cause analysis formula for us to get at. Do you think this is what we need? Is this like a logical step to take once we get this additional data?
Absolutely. I like the systematicness of this and having followed protocols like this when we do like strategic planning and stuff, it gets to what we need. I'm wondering, because oftentimes when I've done this work in the past, it's hours of work to go through this. Is it possible at all for this to do a work session where we spend a little bit longer than just our normally scheduled hour meeting to go through that work? And I know that's asking a lot of people, but I know from previous experience, like breaking it up and spending 2 weeks in between is really hard. It's really great to follow all these steps kind of in one sitting in a true work session with the data in front of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So where are we on time today? So yeah, we're kind of approaching our hour, and I just have kind of set that as kind of a manageable, we can go over an hour or under an hour, but as we're, it's a lot to piece out, and so I think that if we can maybe plan to have another review of data in 2 weeks, and then from there, know that we're going to do a root cause analysis. And I don't know, maybe we can set up differently too. We still have to be on mics and open meeting, but we can do a circle or something else and make it feel a little bit more workshop-y too, because it's hard to have a conversation. Like we're gonna get crick in our necks. So we can definitely kind of get ready for something like this. And then I think that would be probably a good way to really lead us into creating our goals for what we want to do for the next year. It sets us up in a pretty good time frame for that.
And then I know we talked about this a few meetings ago, but pulling, I think, looking as part of that root cause analysis, having all the policies that the district has on attendance in front of us to see, is the policy clear? Is the policy not? Could that potentially be a root cause of some of this? And then if there's need within our action plan or steps to go to the board for possible policy updates.
Yes, thank you for bringing us back to that. Right. Is there anything else that just like wonders that have come up from looking at just all these numbers? or maybe it's not even what the numbers are saying. Are there other things that you've thought about when we're thinking about student attendance? One thing that I was wondering, and I just got ahead of myself, but I'll just share it because I was like brainstorming. And I got to wondering if the traditional way of how parents excuse kids could be improved. And it could be a twofer. It could be easier for parents to put in an excuse, but it could give us more data and also could remind parents of where their child is in their chronic absenteeism. So something that would track, like they fill out a Google form, send it in, it has their email or something that we can verify that it was the parent, and then it would say your child is 2 absences away from being chronically absent or something like, I don't know. With this digital age, it seems like that could be cool.
That could be really cool. And I'm wondering, I know Infinite Campus, which is our recording system, has a ton of features that I know we don't necessarily have access to. Like you can purchase different packages. And I know I just said the word purchase and we're talking about
the
budget. But I'm wondering if we can also, because I love that idea as a parent sometimes, even working for the schools, I'm like, oh, I forgot to, email the attendance office. I know, like, I think getting parents onto Infinite Campus, but I'm wondering if there's something within that where they could do it from the IC app.
Right.
Or, I know I have not worked as much with Infinite Campus. I've worked a lot with Power School, and they could actually build out things like that per our requests and took ideas like that. So I think it's worth maybe talking to Josh, he oversees all of our Infinite Campus stuff, to see, like, do they potentially offer that? Or do we already have it? We just didn't know.
I know.
Sometimes that happens.
I know.
It's a great
I know.
idea.
So yeah, I know that gets, I'm putting the cart before the horse, but I was just, just brainstorming those things. And then also the letters that we send out, they're really dull and quite, I don't know, like throwawayable. And so just, pepping those up and making it more of an attendance journey letter and not just punitive, like showing them, graphs or, color coding it, showing where the student is and what they can do, and kind of being a little bit more helpful in the letters that we send. So those are things that would get to more of solution-based and things that we could throw out there. But I just wanted to say it for the record because I'll forget and get us all kind of just continuing to think. And it's okay in these times to just share what's on your mind too. So even if it's not quite in the process of our root cause analysis and our setting goals and everything, it's okay to just bring up your current thoughts on things too. So I'll open it for another couple minutes to see if anybody else has any thoughts that they want to brainstorm.
I love the idea of the letters. I know we have to follow the NRS on them a little bit, but I think adding to it the color, we are in an age where, we have this beautiful technology and stuff, and we can make things look so much better. And it goes to our goals of family engagement. We really want to engage with our families, and so much of absenteeism follows into our family engagement models and our plans for that. So I think anytime we can get parents understanding what we're communicating and getting a two-way communication effort going versus just the school reaching out is going to benefit us, and we're going to have wins with that for sure on both sides.
Ooh, so you said that like two-way thing, and so that also got me thinking that with the letter, you could have them sign, have a place to sign, like I'm committed to bringing, to my students' attendance and getting them to school or whatever it is, and then they can sign it, and the student can bring it back to school and get something from the school store or, have some kind of positive, so the parents engaging in a, like, commitment, and then that becomes more of a two-way, not just a trash the letter. So, I don't know, just kind of procedural, more things that maybe we can think about in addition to policy.
I do like the idea. I guess my concern just from the students I've interacted with is I feel like there's going to be separate categories of parents who are involved, right? And it's not that I don't think any parent doesn't take their kids' education seriously. I think, especially in difficult economic times, and we have a very unique population in Elko County where we have a lot of blue-collar mining, folk, and they're doing 16, 18-hour days, and then now they have to turn around and make sure their kid's backpack is empty and they're signing all their stuff. I do like the idea of seeing like a letter of attendance or encouraging the attendance. I think a lot of it comes down to education, but also maybe a way to make the whole process as streamlined and easy as we can. And I'm wondering if, I know when your kid misses a day of school, it automatically sends that text message or voicemail. Would there be a possibility in kind of meeting what you guys are talking about halfway with sending a thing out saying, hey, your student has missed 4 days out of this, and they've also missed today. And hey, by the way, it's automatically generated. However, it's 4 out of X amount of days. It's critical to make sure they're in school. Just some sort of automatic text message, something, while retaining the privacy of the student, and meeting, make sure you guys' policies are not being violated or anything like that. But that's kind of what I see from a law enforcement standpoint, and like the kids that I interact with is a lot of times, like I said, the parents that I'm dealing with, kids are missing school. They're just trying to survive. So what can we do to assist them in making sure their kids are getting to school and without adding that extra hoop they have to jump through? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, I love that. And I wonder, that's another Josh question. Just gonna have to bring Josh as a guest speaker. Add that to the notes. We'll bring Josh.
I think that's a great idea, actually, because I know, like, we potentially already have the technology, because I'm not sure all what we're contracted with IC, Infinite Campus. Or is it something that would be economically valuable for students that we can look into? Because there's so many things out there that are already doing some of this stuff, and we don't necessarily have to invent it. I think that's great. And that two-way communication. I think whatever we do, family engagement has to happen here. And so often, I think especially at the high school level, and I'm a high school parent, so I'm talking about myself, we tend to disengage more. And so we really want to pull, that's been something on my heart a lot lately, is how do we better build those relationships or maintain them? Our elementaries do a phenomenal job of parent engagement at the younger levels, and how do we maintain that up, especially if we see a trend upward in high school? To me, that's probably a root cause, but we'll see what the data really says. But I think there's correlations between that. So I love that two-way.
I think a part of that two-way as well is, if there's the possibility of doing that, I'm talking about, streamlining and excusing absences. And like I was talking about earlier, I feel like a lot of the medical absences are actual doctor appointments that just, Dr. No isn't being brought back, which I believe would probably reduce a lot of the absences that are documented. Would be if there was an option of, that, hey, your student was absent for today. If there was a QR code or, I'm thinking of a QR code for your thing, or a link that would automatically link a portal that would open and say, hey, why was your student absent? If it's Dr. No, you can take a photo or upload the document right here, boom, right into the system. I don't know if that's something that can be done, but I think that would probably go to reduce some of the stuff, but it's not going to reduce maybe some of the family dynamics or some of the issues that are happening that are creating a lot of students miss continuous amount of days.
I like that. I send mine electronically all the time. The second I get the doctor's note, I snap a picture and email it off to our front office, and it's great. I don't know if parents know you can do that. So I love that idea. I'm wondering if this team doesn't mind. Our front office staff at Elko High, I don't know the other front office staffs, but they do a phenomenal job of reaching out to parents and calling, and they're constantly making phone calls to parents. If you guys don't mind, if I kind of poll them on this idea of seeing, like, is there something that maybe we could pilot even for the rest of this, starting the last quarter next week, and see what they would think too, because they may have some good ideas. I think talking to our front office staffs at all of our school, who really are, these people are amazing at what they do, and they are the ones keeping track of all this data. So I would love to hear from them. And maybe that's another data piece that we need to pull in, is have conversations with our front office staff, who really is the people communicating the majority of the time with our families. Just a thought.
I agree with that. I know I work with a lot of the schools out in Spring Creek, Spring Creek High School, Spring Creek Middle, Sage and Liberty, and Spring Creek Elementary, and the front staff is amazing up there. And I know I have personally seen them continuously reach out and track and, give me heads up on various students, and hey, can you check on them? And we haven't seen them in a couple days. Those things. So I think it's excellent. I think it's an excellent idea. I'm wondering if we should maybe, if we're talking about like getting just ideas, or are we talking about like getting like a survey going? So if we're going to do something like that, do we want to standardize the questions, or do we just want to kind of, I guess, ask questions about what their thoughts are?
And you're saying too that we create a survey that would be sent out to parents? Is that what, or to the school district, or to the specific schools?
I think we should at least just get to where the staff, the front office staff that is constantly interacting with the parents day in and day out, there's nobody else better. I think that from my experience, what I've seen, that would have the information than the front office staff. Like, they're constantly talking to them. So what are they seeing? What's the big holdup? And then, so to make sure that we're eliciting the correct questions from the front office staff, do we want to have a standardized set of questions so we get the same feedback back, or are we okay with just saying, hey, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And I'm pondering your question on us. I think there's value in having the same feedback in a survey. I don't love surveys, but there's also value in conversation. So I'm wondering how we do a little bit of both. Because I think sending out a survey that we create would be how we get to the majority of that way it would include all of our staff, including our outlying schools. So we're looking at a district-wide chronic absenteeism rate. I'd love to hear from our outlying schools, and we don't want to forget them. But then, maybe conversations that we could have and bring back as well. I mean, maybe it's a mix of both.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that'd be great, whether it's we receive that feedback and then we can follow up with them and say, hey, you guys are seeing, XYZ on, this survey that we generated. Tell me more about it. Is there something else that you're going on? So I don't know if that would have to create more work for us and saying, reaching out during school hours or after school hours and asking those kind of questions. But I think, because there's always more beyond a survey, or there's something that is on survey that we aren't necessarily able to ask or get answers for. So.
I am happy in this next week to work on creating that. I'm happy to just create a quick Google survey for our front office staff. And then maybe I'll get some feedback from our front office staff on what questions do you think are important that we're asking, and send that out, since I am in the school.
Appreciate that so much. Thank you. Well, I think that's a good note to wrap it up. How about you, Sarah?
That sounds good. Thanks, Katie, for getting that started.
Yeah, anything else that sorry if you weren't able to engage in the conversation quite as easily. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Sarah?
No, I think, what you guys have talked about, I'm sitting here nodding along going, yep, that's great. Okay. I think that all sounds good. And starting with the people who kind of have those interactions most frequently I think that'll be an interesting piece to add in. So.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, then let's move to item 3.01, our period for all of our public comment. The same 3-minute limit restrictions on and restrictions on personnel issues apply. Any public comment? Has anybody checked to see if we have any viewers on YouTube ever?
We did once because one of my coworkers said, hey, I went and watched your,
Oh, nice.
and they said we were doing a great job.
Sweet. All right, and item 4.01, this meeting is adjourned at 5:05. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Had 2 viewers on.
Yay!
Yeah, DLB Monday. She goes, I went and watched your attendance meeting. I'm like, oh, that's really great that you would give us your time for that. So.
Yeah, your last meeting